For more on all of this, we can bring in our international affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert. Doug, is the bromance over between these two?
First of all, what bromance? Bromance is sort of a label that was applied by sort of the narrative by the press and the headlines, this supposed bromance. It never really existed. It's true. You go back to February 2025, shortly after Donald Trump returned to the White House the previous month, and you had Emmanuel Macron meeting there in the Oval Office, and yeah, it looked like a love fest, one of these touchy-feely, I'll use the word bromance, as it was labeled at the time. For Donald Trump, the bromance is purely as deep as the other person's, that is, the other person in that friendship's ability to do Trump's bidding, that is, to do his will. It is not a friendship in the conventional sense of how you define a friendship of mutual respect, give and take a little bit, listening to each other, a true earnest dialogue of, like I said, mutual respect. So all of the knee tapping, the back slapping, the hugging, the gripping of hands, all the touchy-feely stuff, the so-called love fest that we saw. It means nothing it only means something so long as Emmanuel Macron says and does nothing that in any way rubs Donald Trump the wrong way. So the flattery and cajoling works as long as all you do is flatter and cajole Donald Trump and then hopefully get what you want out of him. The problem is that does not happen. It has not happened with Emmanuel Macron. Donald Trump's so-called friendship with Macron only went so far as Macron was seen as someone who, quote, liked Donald Trump. I'll use the analogy. I was talking earlier this morning about J.D. Vance and how J.D. Vance initially compared Trump to Hitler. A lot of people said, well, how could Trump end up picking him as a vice president? Well, that's because he finally had a conversion, J.D. Vance, and he ended up saying that he agreed and liked Donald Trump and even admired him. And Donald Trump, in response, said, yeah, sure, he said some bad things about me in the past, presumably referring to the he's like Hitler comment. But he said, but then he met me and he fell in love. For Donald Trump, it's through the prism of that. Any friendship is based on a perception from Trump's side that people like him, that if they meet him, they can't help but be friendly with him. And that's what he encounters with a lot of people, and no exception with Emmanuel Macron. Emmanuel Macron is now learning the hard way, although he is set on continuing to reach out and have diplomacy with Trump, is learning the hard way that there is no friendship with Donald Trump. By definition, you cannot be friends with him. You can be transactionally backslapping and knee-tapping, but you cannot be really friends with him.
So where does this leave France and the rest of Europe? Because they find themselves in a difficult position going up against the U.S. president, who has his eyes on Greenland, which is technically EU territory.
It leaves them in between literally that proverbial rock and a hard place. It's not a tight position. It's an untenable position. Tight suggests that there's some way that you can negotiate with Donald Trump and sort of have him hear reason from the European perspective. It's simply not going to happen because Donald Trump's default is to have his bidding done. If it's not done, he will continue to proceed, as he likes. Right now, we have heard the Europeans signs that they're waking up, that they get it, that they have to collaborate right now in defense of Greenland's sovereignty and territorial integrity. They have to partner together to ensure Arctic security. They have to make it clear that Greenland's status is non-negotiable while trying. They're also this delicate balancing act, trying to show the United States that they're still on its side. They still consider the U.S. its friends. It's an extremely difficult balancing act because it's one in which Donald Trump and Trumpism is just not willing to engage. Donald Trump's ultimate goal is to recreate, in essence, the world order in his own image. If you go along with that, so much the better. You can be his, quote, bromance friend. If you don't go along with that, get ready for an extremely rocky ride. The problem is right now for Europe is, you say, a tight spot. If they go along with Donald Trump right now, they basically reduce themselves to protectorate, to vassal status, showing what Donald Trump already thinks. Europe's weak and divided and has no power. If they don't go along with it, yeah, they might have some real tensions in that transatlantic relationship, but you could argue perhaps that doing something, hitting back, will end up putting them in a better position than if they do nothing and suffer the consequences of reduced credibility and status on the world stage.
We'll see how this plays out in Davos over the coming days. Thank you very much for that, Douglas.